Hey guys, today we're doing a stat breakdown of the Bantamweight division, looking at records, striking, wrestling, and at the end we'll crown the statistically best striker in the division and the statistically best grappler in the division. Taking a quick look at the rankings, we have Aljo as champ, and in the top 5 we have some elite competition in Merab, O'Malley, Cejudo, Sandhagen, and Yan. And notably, in the rest of the division, we have Cejudo just outside the top 5, and we have Umar Nurmagomedov in 11, who is one of the most promising contenders in the division, for good reason, we'll see later. Firstly, looking at the UFC records, we can see Aljo has the most wins in UFC Bantamweight history, and Song Yadong already has 9 wins at the age of 26. Now, onto losses. Umar is the only undefeated fighter in the division through 4 UFC fights. Another interesting observation is that all of Petr Yan's losses have come in his past 5 fights. I know you can debate whether they were wins or losses, but that's the way they were judged. Taking a look at win-loss ratio, we can see O'Malley is scorching everyone in the division with a 9-1 UFC record, which is including his Dana White's Contender Series win. Now, onto opponents' win-loss ratio, we can see that Yan has faced the opponents with the best UFC record, 4 of his past 5 fights being against the top 3 fighters currently in the division. Ricky Simon has also faced some tough opponents for his ranking, fighting Faber, Font, Dvalishvili, and Yadong. Lastly, we can see that whilst O'Malley himself has the best win-loss ratio, his opponents have not had much success in the UFC, and also he's 1-1-1 against ranked opponents in the UFC. Onto the striking stats, Chito Vera has the most knockouts in the top 15, and the second most knockouts in UFC Bantamweight history, whereas O'Malley is a close second, who is likely on track to get the UFC record, already amassing 5 knockouts in the UFC. Looking at knockout rate, which is how often a fighter scores a knockout in any given fight, Adrian Yanez is on top, with 5 of 6 wins by knockout in only 7 fights. Looking at knockout losses, we can see there are 7 chins in the UFC that are yet to be cracked in a UFC fight, and the maximum knockout losses in the division is only 2, so knocking out a top 15 bantamweight is very, very rare. Taking a look at strike differential, O'Malley outstrikes his opponents by the most in the top 15, although he did have plus 160 significant strikes versus Mutino, which can bias his numbers. We can also see that Yan has low striking differential compared to other strikers, likely due to his notoriously slow starts. Lastly, we can see that Chito on average gets outstruck and mostly wins by finish. He has 11 of 14 wins by finish and 7 of 7 losses by decision. Onto significant strikes per minute, O'Malley is putting up a crazy 5th in UFC history and 1st in bantamweight history, and Yanez and Font are not far behind, showing the high quality of striking in the division at the moment. Looking at strikes absorbed per minute, we can see that Umar has the 2nd lowest in UFC history, only to heavyweight Jailton Almeida, who absorbs 0.08 strikes per minute. We can also see that Aljo and Merab are 2nd and 3rd, since controlling their opponents using wrestling prevents them from being hit. We're in a golden era with UFC bantamweight striking accuracy. Umar is 1st in UFC bantamweight history, Sugar O'Malley is 2nd in bantamweight history, and Gutierrez is 4th in bantamweight history. Absolutely crazy. We can also see some crazy striking defense numbers, with Umar being 2nd in UFC history, currently with a slightly better defense than GSP. Note that Umar has only had 4 fights and won't come up on UFC records websites since this requires 5 fights. We can also see that Chito is last, and his defense is really a problem, which is why he relies on finishes to get the win. Onto grappling stats now. We can see Aljo and Chito are on top of submissions, with the 3rd most in UFC bantamweight history. Something else that surprised me is that there are 2 wrestlers, Cejudo and Merab, who are yet to record a single UFC submission. If we look at submission rate, Umar Nurmagomedov is miles ahead, averaging a submission in 50% of his UFC fights. And absolutely no one in this division gets submitted, with only 5 of the top 15 fighters being submitted only once in their UFC career. Looking at takedown accuracy, we can see something very interesting. Song Yadong is the best in the division. He has wrestled way more than I thought, with takedowns landed in 6 of 12 UFC fights. With this mix of striking and wrestling, he definitely could be title contender material. There are 2 fighters in this division with perfect takedown defense. Umar has defended 1 of 1 takedowns, and Yanez has defended 7 of 7. We can also see, interestingly, Sterling has the worst takedown defense in the division, since he's more than happy giving up position to get the fight to the ground. there is no surprise that Merab has the most takedowns landed per 15 minutes, and is 5th in UFC history for total takedowns landed, and will likely get the record by the end of his career. Merab also eclipses the rest of the division with control time, averaging more than 1 round of control time per fight. And now, let's look at who the statistically best strikers in the division are. The way I did this was for each of the stats on screen, I gave the best fighter 5 points, the second best fighter 4 points, the third best fighter 3 points, and so on, and then added up their totals to see which fighter had the highest score. In third place, we have Rob Font, who is 3rd in knockouts, 5th in strike differential, 3rd in strikes landed per minute, 9th in strike accuracy, and 13th in strike defense. In second place, we have Umar Nurmagomedov, who is 14th in knockouts, 3rd in strike differential, 7th in strikes landed per minute, 1st in strike accuracy, and 1st in strike defense. And the statistically best striker in the division, you can see in the image, no surprise, is Sean O'Malley, who is 2nd in knockouts, 1st in strike differential and strikes landed per minute, 2nd in strike accuracy, and 4th in strike defense. Now, looking at the statistically best grapplers in the division. In third place, we have Merab Dvalishvili, who is 9th in submissions, 11th in takedown accuracy, 7th in takedown defense, although he's 1st in takedowns landed and control time. In second place, we have Ricky Simon, who is 3rd in both submissions and takedown accuracy, 8th in takedown defense, 2nd in takedowns landed, and 4th in control time. And the statistically best grappler in the division is Umar Nurmagomedov, who already is 5th in submissions, 4th in takedown accuracy, 1st in takedown differential, 3rd in takedowns landed, and 3rd in control time. Initially, I wasn't sure if Umar was worth the hype, but he's putting up some crazy division high grappling and striking numbers, so I'm excited to see how he goes against Sandhagen. And that's the end of the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, let me know in the comments and tell me which division you'd like to see next or what surprised you. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all those good things, and I'll see you next time.